The learning process will never end. I'm almost 60 years old and I'm still learning. I mean, when I guest conduct, I'm like, some of my stuff, I'm like, ooh, next time I shouldn't do that. Oh, that has to change. It's a constant learning process for a composer, and it's exciting that each piece just gets a little bit better.
Welcome to the Origins of Creativity podcast, brought to you by BooklingMedia, where we discover the magic behind creativity through the stories of passionate creators. Listen in and fill your creative vessel with delightful insights and uplifting tales.
Hello, you are listening to the Origins of Creativity podcast. I am your host, Becky Gehrisch. Thanks for joining us. In today's episode, I chat with a composer who shares his creative process behind composition and film orchestration. He also reflects on the role of emotion and experience in shaping his music. Today's guest began his musical journey as a trumpet player before earning a place in the prestigious film scoring program at the University of Southern California, where he studied with legendary composer Jerry Goldsmith. He went on to build a career in Hollywood, collaborating with renowned composers including Marco Beltrami and Brian Tyler. As an orchestrator, he has contributed to more than 80 major studio films such as the Super Mario Brothers movies, Fantastic Four, Fast X, The Shallows, Venom, Let There Be Carnage, The Mummy, and Ben-Hur, among many others. Beyond film, he is also a prolific composer with more than 80 concert band and orchestral work published and performed by ensembles around the world. Thank you for joining me today on the show, Rossano Galante.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
This is so great. And I wanted to begin a little differently, since this is audio-only podcast, by sharing a soundbite from your piece for our listeners to get an idea of what you create. So hold on just a moment while I do that. Wow, that's so cool and so impactful and exciting. And you have such a variety of music throughout all of your scores. But why did you choose this piece to share with us today?
Yeah, I chose that piece because it kind of captures the essence of my style. I've always been influenced by movie music, and this piece starts out very big. It's kind of like a big waterfall, and then you have the horns come in with that melody, and I really feel it grabs the listener, and that's why I chose that piece. It's a really fun piece.
And that one is called The Falls, correct?
The Falls, yes.
Lovely. So people can look that up and listen to it. And it's really, really beautiful among all of your pieces, actually.
Oh, thank you.
Of course. So movies were an influence, it sounds like, of course.
Yes.
Were there any other musical influences growing up that you kind of looked at, or was it just movies? Or
Yeah, so I grew up in a musical family. My father was a clarinetist, my brother was a clarinetist, my other brother a trumpet player, my sister a singer. So music was always in the house. But I recall in elementary school, we went on a field trip to hear the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra. This is even before I started studying music. And we were like just one class, and the whole orchestra comes in on the stage, and they start playing the Saber Dance by Khachaturian. And I was from Buffalo, so we knew that piece because of the Buffalo Sabres. They used that music on the commercials. And when they played that live, I was in awe of how an orchestra could make all these sounds. And I'm not saying it influenced me as a composer. I was just curious as how that worked. How did all these instruments... So that was an inspiration for the future of me, I guess, becoming a composer. But of course, I remember when I started studying trumpet, I remember going to the movies and we saw Superman. I'm a young kid. After I left the theater, I was in tears because the musical score was so stirring, emotional, and riveting to me. I was crying. Those were
Wow.
some of my influences early on.
That's really interesting to think how, as a little kid or as a kid, the how you react to things, what built that up, what started that, you have music in your family, in your home, and
Yeah.
then to be that, something in your brain is drawn to that emotionally. And
Hmm.
that's really interesting how different people, react to different things and how that just sparked things for you. And I
Oh
love that.
yeah, definite spark.
Wow. And then were there any composers or, as you got older, were there any composers or other musicians that, were kind of like your heroes along the way?
Yeah, I have some pretty big heroes. Of course, I'm a big fan of the scores of John Williams. I think he's like the best composer I've ever experienced. I'm drawn to his style and emotionally, oh my gosh. But I studied Tchaikovsky scores, Debussy scores, Mahler, Brahms, all those fun score study, to learn how to orchestrate and to compose. And yeah, and many film composers. I'm a fan of like Alan Silvestri, James Horner, James Newton Howard, just brilliant musicians.
Oh, I love that. And so when you were in school studying, did you start out with this plan to go into composing, or were you just playing trumpet? You like music? How did that evolve there for you?
That's a good question. So I loved playing trumpet and I took to it very fast. And of course I was fascinated with how to make a band, how to compose and how to make a band sound good. So my goal wasn't necessarily to become a composer. I was just fascinated at trying to make a band sound good, just through trial and error. And believe me, when I started, I could easily say I was the worst composer ever created. I was just terrible. But I didn't really see me becoming a composer. I was just having fun learning how to do it. It was like a hobby. Yeah.
Yeah. I love to hear that because I could see people thinking that, this might be something that they're interested in if they're a younger listener. And I think for people who are looking into this and wanting as a, young student to be going into composing, they might feel that, they have this plan and this is what they're going to do. But I think a lot of people might have more of a story that you have where they find it fascinating. They're going to study it and be curious about it and
Yeah.
start digging into how it works. And I think that what builds things. And like you said, to start out, it's not always going to be great, but the fact that
Right.
you are so curious about it
I was
and
so
how it works. And I can
curious.
see that with even just playing a musical instrument. A lot of people who aren't interested in it, if they're starting it in band, they might not find it interesting. So they're not going to practice it. They're not going to get better. And the ones
Right.
who are finding it interesting, they're going to like, I want to see if this does this and how it happens. So they
Hmm.
get better. And I think that's just the best advice already.
Oh yeah. Oh
Listening
yeah.
to
Definitely. It
you.
worked for me.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. Okay. Okay, so when you were watching movies as a kid, like you mentioned Superman and you
Hmm.
mentioned John Williams, what other movies were inspiring to you besides Superman?
Oh my gosh. I remember going to see E.T. First of all, the movie was amazing, and the score, I just could not get enough of it. I listened to it so much. It's so beautiful. I still listen to this day and I cry. John Williams' scoring abilities and brilliance, it just captivates my soul, and I love it so much. He's an inspiration. I would say my music does not sound like John Williams because I want to sound like me, but he's definitely an emotional inspiration for me.
And
Definitely.
I can hear that in your pieces, this emotional part that
Yeah.
I think I am drawn to too. I love movie scores and I think that is that emotional piece of it that kind of goes from exciting to sad or it's just very emotional. And so are you an emotional person anyway? Does that just kind of come out from your soul in that way in that way?
Oh my gosh, I cry all the time.
I
Oh,
love
totally emotional.
That's great. I mean, and I think that's what makes the best music or art is being that vulnerable emotional part of yourself and letting that be expressed. So I think that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Are
Wow.
you an emotional person? I would assume you're also an emotional
Yeah,
person.
exactly. And that's what I'm wondering, like, if most obsessed, passionate creators are are like that. They just have
I think
this.
we are.
Yeah, I think so. And that's just brilliant. So besides music, what other creative passions have you had? If you tend to seem to, want to figure out what the sound is and how to build it, are you like a builder or any other kind of artist at all?
I'm not really creative in any other way except music. I do remember as a kid when I was growing up, I was very much into landscaping and
Wow.
making the exterior of the house look beautiful. I mean, I'm sure my parents were happy about that. We had beautiful flowers and everything was so pristine. So I don't have that anymore because of time, but I do like my art to look nice. Uh, that was probably something I enjoyed doing that. But as far as like being an artist, I'm not very good at drawing pictures. I don't have that ability.
The
But yeah,
landscaping, that is really interesting because I can see that as an organizational, you're putting all these different pieces together in a beautiful way, and it's very
yeah,
similar. And I think that's really cool.
it was. I remember
Wow.
having so much fun when I was a kid landscaping.
So yeah, it's like an organizational, like how to put the pieces together and how do they fit, just
Exactly.
like composing. I love that.
Yeah.
When you're orchestrating films,
Mhm.
and you're also composing, is there obviously there's a difference, but what kind of a
Yes.
difference? If you kind of go into the little bit of the technical aspect of that.
Sure. So it's actually a very big difference. So when, like, say I'm writing like I'm a concert band composer and orchestra composer. If I'm composing, I'm actually creating the melodies, creating the harmonies, figuring out who's doing what, and the whole thing is my responsibility. Even the parts, it's all me. Now for orchestration for like movies, very big difference. So I'm an orchestrator. So when a director makes a movie, he hires a composer and they meet and they watch the movie, which is called the spotting session. That's where they decide where the music starts and where the music stops and what kind of music is in that specific musical cue. And this meeting can last hours because the scores could be around 90 minutes of music and it's
Wow.
90 minutes of separate compositions for the scenes in the movie. Now, when that happens, the composer then goes to a studio and creates the score, like creates a fake orchestra from all the sounds that they have in Pro Tools or Digital Performer. Once all that is composed, they send it back to the director for approval. Once that's approved, they send me the files. Now, believe it or not, some people think that the orchestrator gets just a piano file. That's not true. The composer really does create the score where there's violins assignments, brass assignments, and woodwind assignments. It's all kind of there, but in a somewhat anemic form, meaning the orchestrator has to beef it up just a little bit. So I would take the file and transport everything into Sibelius notation software. And I would see that everything is pretty much there. Sometimes they don't write a woodwind section. I would have to create an entire woodwind section based on the strings and the brass. And then I add dynamics, I do doublings, I just make the orchestra thicker and richer. And I add a little bit more because they can easily take it away. If it's too much, they'll take it away at the recording session. Easier to take away than add. So
That's
it's
really interesting.
it is, yeah, and that's pretty much what I do. Clearly, it's more satisfying to be a composer because you're the creator of everything. Orchestrator, it's rewarding, but you're making someone else's music sound just a little bit, just taking it up a notch.
Yeah, but it's not the
Yeah,
creation aspect of it. So it's like the more technical side. And
more
so
technical. Yeah.
question about that. So if you receive something and they had assigned a clarinet to something and you decided no, this would be better for the oboe, you would switch that kind of thing around, or would you just stick with what they had? Or
If they have specifically like a flute solo or oboe solo, I can't mess with that.
oh, okay.
But if they have a soaring string section, I can add woodwinds to beef that up,
Yes. Oh, wow.
which
Okay.
will thicken up the strings. Oh, definitely.
That's fun. Okay, yeah, I can. Yeah, it's a different. It's almost like a different mindset. It's not the coming up with it, feeling the emotion part of it as much
Right.
as seeing how that fits together, like just working on this puzzle at the end. And
Correct. Correct. Correct.
okay, so it sounds like you prefer the composing over the other just at the end of the day, or?
Yes, I
Okay.
prefer to be the composer. It is more difficult because coming up with
Yes.
melodies, structuring an entire composition is very, very hard, all the orchestration. Whereas when someone else has already written the melodies and harmonies, the orchestration part is much easier. It's just that the fact that we have to move faster in the film
Right.
world. There's deadlines, which that
Sure.
can be stressful.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, I can see that. And then when you're composing, how do you arrange things? What's your creative process behind coming up with a theme or an idea?
So my creative process when starting a composition, of course, is self-loathing because it's so hard to start from nothing. And I get actually sad and sometimes come to tears if I can't come up with a strong melody. But I know it will come to me. I just have to be patient. You cannot rush it. Even though there are deadlines, I still have time not to rush it. In fact, I'm working on a commission right now. And when I started it, I called my friend Dana, who's also an orchestrator for Brian Tyler and Marco Beltrami. Dana knew, great friend. I said, Dana, I can't do this. It's too hard. She goes, Rossano, take a break, stop, walk away, don't force it. And I promise you the next day you'll be okay. And she was right. She really helped me out. And it's true. You have to walk away and then you just keep trying, trial and error. And eventually a strong melody will come to me, sometimes by accident, sometimes by working it out, the intervals, the rhythm. And once you get your 2 or 3 themes for a piece, then you're ready to rock and things start flowing and then it gets really fun. And I'm at that really fun stage right now, thank God.
And what part is that where you're just kind of deciding where things fall now that you've kind of built it up and you're more the detail side?
Pretty much like I have my themes and now you orchestrate it and decide who gets to play what kind of accompaniment, what kind of fun woodwind things are going to happen while the melody's playing. It's really a thrilling experience.
And it's really cool to hear, as a professional to still have the moments, the whole trust the process kind of feel that you're not just automatic like a robot. I come in, I think of the song, there it is, boom, it's out. It's
Right.
still a struggle because it sounds like creativity is always a struggle with finding what works.
Yes, always a struggle. What about you? Can I ask you a question? Do you
Sure.
experience that kind of struggle or?
Absolutely. I'm smiling as we do this because, I'll start a painting and I'm ready to throw it out the window. And my husband will say, he'll say, just trust the process. This is always the same pattern. It always starts out this way and then it'll be fine. But it's like I forget every time the next painting, that the struggles I went through with the first one. And I have to look
Yeah.
back and say, oh, right, that piece, that wasn't working. I had to paint over it. So it's really good to hear, I mean, so many of us see the end results, we'll see things on social media or it's just the polished version or
Yeah.
hear the final song or hear the final movie and just think it magically happened and that they're so, beyond our comprehension. And it's refreshing. And I think other creatives who are, musical or however, they're going to see and hear this as something that it's just part of it, and I think that's why we're doing this. And I think it's so important.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And so some of your songs are titled Beyond the Horizon, The Wishing Well, A Ship in the Mist, The Ascent from Darkness, Aurora Borealis. And I love the titles. And I'm curious to know if you have some examples of how those kind of became. Did you think of the title first, the theme, and then kind of built that sound? Or as you were playing with sound, did you think it sounded like a wishing well? Like how does that work?
So it's interesting. When I get a commission, sometimes they'll actually give me a subject matter, which is great because I can be influenced and inspired by the subject they're giving me. Now, when there's a subject matter, like there's a piece I wrote called Midnight Ride, they wanted something about Paul Revere, which that's great, totally inspirational, and that
Yeah.
helps me. Now, if they just say something heroic, something cinematic, what happens is that I'll come up with a musical story first, not an actual story, just a musical arc that sounds exciting to me. Now, after I write that composition, I will sit back, I'll listen to it. I do a fake mock-up of the band, and I'll say, what is this story? Now, what is this story telling me? It will tell me like, oh, this sounds like a majestic mountain, or this sounds like a wishing well, or this sounds like that, or this, and I'll come up with a pretty cool title. I love trying to title my pieces. It's never easy because they have to stick. And that's pretty much how it's done. Like the piece A Ship in the Mist, they said the person who wanted to commission me liked fishing and liked sailing. So I decided to write something like a sea shanty. And that was very inspirational. The more information I get from what they want, the easier my job is. Yeah.
Okay, so who are the people who are commissioning you to do these pieces?
Yeah, so it's a lot of community bands, a lot of high school concert bands, some college groups, but those are the main groups that commission me. Mainly community ensembles. There's some really great community groups that are out there.
Oh, that's really neat. I never really knew that process at all of how people would get in contact with the composer and be able to request something that then you would be able to have for any concert band or orchestra. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. And then the titles, it's almost like you also sound like it's more of a poetic side of you to be able to find the right words to pair with your pieces. And
Yes.
that's kind of fun too.
It's always fun and really kind of challenging to find the right couple words that fit the piece because there has to be a good title.
Yes.
That's always a challenge.
And it definitely works. If I'm listening or I see the title, I think, oh, Aurora Borealis. Am I going to imagine that in my mind? And it's kind of, it's fun to hear the orchestration and to imagine the scenes and it really fits together. So I think that's part of the fun as the listener to see the title and then imagine throughout the song what it is without having, for example, it's not in a movie, it's a standalone piece.
Yes.
But you can imagine your own movie with it. And I think that's a lot different than hearing something with lyrics or something pop or something short. It's different. And I think that's really fun.
Yeah.
So if somebody were commissioning you, they would say like The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. So will there be a time when you find like there's a lot of requests for like patriotic things or more abstract? Does it ebb and flow, or do you get tired of doing one kind of style that they keep requesting? Or
well, I do get a lot of requests for cinematic, heroic, romantic pieces. Now that is great. I do love doing that, but it does become a challenge because you have to sort of reinvent the wheel each time and come up with something unique yet similar. That is a big challenge to me. So sometimes when I get a commission for like a ballad, I'm like, yay, a ballad, I love them. And those are fun because it's slower paced, not as difficult, but you have to make it lush. Yeah, I do. It does get tricky when I get the same kind of request, but I do love that kind of stuff, but it's a challenge.
As a painter, I'm seeing, I've got a set thing, and if somebody wants the same kind of thing but different, how many variants can I change to make it its own thing and unique, but also keeping the main idea of it. So that is, and by the time you do so many, what pieces might start sounding similar or wait, I already had that in this song. That could be, my brain would kind of start to implode a little bit from that.
Same here.
Okay.
Here. But then again, we both have a style. And that's what people do, like a style. It's a comfort for them. Like, oh, we know this person, this artist will do it this way. This composer will do it this way. A style is hard to get. Once you get your style, you're doing good.
Okay. That's exactly. It's just, and you, like you said, play with it and it kind of changes and becomes its own piece, its own thing, its own entity. Okay.
That is true.
Do you ever focus on holiday themes? There's some that sounded more winter-like Aurora Borealis a little bit, but do you ever kind of go down that path with more of a seasonal type piece?
I've never been asked to do an arrangement of like something for Christmas or I have been requested like something patriotic, something Americana, not so much for a holiday, but just that kind of composition. And I love patriotic. I love Americana. I just did an orchestra piece that was very Americana. It's being premiered next month.
What is that one titled?
Oh my gosh. Hanover Landscapes. It's Hanover,
Oh,
Pennsylvania. And
okay, very cool.
it's getting published by Alfred Publishing, and it's being released next year. I'm very proud of it. I don't get too many orchestra commissions, and I'm starting to get more, which is great because I love it all.
Oh, that's awesome. And then
Yeah.
when you are orchestrating for films, do you
hmm
receive, like you said, you receive the score, and a lot of times you'll have that instrumentation kind of laid out.
hmm
I guess my question is, in the Super Mario movies,
hmm
there's the original video game music, and then they
hmm
have sound effects. How does that kind of come to you if it's not just a sound? Do they have those plugged in already, the parts where it's from the video game, and then they morph into the original orchestration, and then you kind of just get it all together? Or do you have to kind of fine tune where things lay in those pieces?
Right. So with sound effects, that's like a separate entity from the score. But if you're talking about sound design in the score, like weird effects, that is why orchestration is getting more difficult for me. So a composer will maybe just press one key on on their keyboard, and you'll get this weird effect, like an aleatoric, crazy effect like this, like sometimes in horror music. Now that's all. The orchestrator will just see a whole note. We have to listen and try to create that in the score. That is the challenge. That is very difficult because the orchestrator is actually creating that orchestration and sound, whereas the composer just presses one note. Now, believe me, the composers are great, and they are writing the whole score. But there are cool sound effects that there's a library of sound effects where you just press a key, and the orchestrator has to orchestrate that for the orchestra, and that is very challenging.
That's what I was imagining. That, yeah, because if listeners have heard, the Super Mario movies soundtrack, the new Super Mario Brother movie just released, and to hear that in movies, you're going to hear all of these weird sound effect pieces that are also, like you were saying, in the orchestration,
Mm-hmm.
that peeling that out, it's very complicated listening to it, especially solo. Like if it's all by itself and not being watched, it's really interesting to hear, like any soundtrack.
Oh
And
yeah.
I just imagine that would be, like you said, a little more challenging to kind of piece together what the idea is. I mean, do you get to see the imagery that they're going with for that, or are you just going with the sound?
It's mainly the audio file we get. Sometimes they'll send us the video, but it's very rare. And this movie, the part two, is even more rhythmically challenging and exciting and busy. It's going to be a great score. It's going to be a great movie.
Wow, that's really cool. I just find that my mind just kind of blows up a little bit with the idea of trying to piece that together without having the visual movie to know what exactly is happening, what character's doing what emotion.
Yeah,
And wow, that's just like magical.
it's very magical. Yeah, they did a great job, and
Yeah.
see how the movie does. I think it's going to be fun.
Oh my gosh, yes, I'm excited. When you were first creating or first composing music, what was it like hearing your original scores performed live for the first time?
So I think I told you the first piece I wrote, I was in eighth grade.
Oh wow.
Because I was like, I want to write something. I can't wait. So I wrote what I thought was this masterpiece. So I wrote this piece. I had my friends come over my house because it was about for 15 people, and I had a big house. We had a basement and we had a rehearsal. Oh my gosh, it was just the worst. I was so bummed. It
Oh no.
sounded so. And the thing is, the kids, my friends, played it great. It was my music that was terrible. And my friend came up to me, and he could tell I was depressed. He said, "Yes, yes, Rossano, you are a terrible composer, but your next piece is going to be so much better." So fast forward to I'm a senior in high school. I'm more mature. I've studied a little bit. I wrote a 16-bar fanfare for the band. I brought it in. I said, "Can we run this through real quick? You conduct it. I'll play my trumpet." It sounded great, and that's when I knew I had to pursue this because there's nothing more rewarding than to hear your creative thoughts coming back to me. I'm sure that's the way you feel when you complete something like, "Oh my God, this is amazing."
That's really cool. So what did your director say after getting up there and having the band play it? Was he, I mean, assuming positive with this is cool, keep going, I don't know.
He was very positive. He
Okay.
thought it sounded. He said, "Great, 16 bars," and I had brought stuff in later on, more little bigger pieces, and they liked it. It was still young and not
Yes.
great, but definitely was impressed that I was able to do this at some, at this age,
Yeah, exactly.
learning all the orchestrations and all that stuff.
I mean, most kids or high school kids, even, they're all over the place with different activities and interests, and the attention to put into something like that at those ages is just kind of going back to your fascination and curiosity to put something together to finish this, to build it. And I think it's really kind of
Yes.
cool to see both ends of that educational section of your life, and how it kind of went back to that.
Oh yeah,
And it was
yeah.
great to see that your friend said that to you, to just, this isn't the best, but you're going to get better. I mean, that's pretty mature for an eighth grade friend to be able
Yeah.
to support you like that. A lot of people would just say, oh gosh, we're not going to come over anymore. We don't want to play this. And that's important. So for those who are, seeing their creative friends struggling, or a friend who's trying something for the first time, it's great to just say, it's going to be even better the next time.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's hard to
right.
say that with people who are practicing an instrument or doing anything, and especially young kids that they're working on something and they just feel like quitting because it doesn't sound right. But that's the whole point. It's not going to, unless you are passionately working on it, and it's
Yes.
still cool to see that you're that passionate about the music that you just have to do it, right?
Just have to do it. And the thing is, the learning process will never end. I'm almost 60 years old and I'm still learning. I mean, when I guest conduct, I'm like, some of my stuff, I'm like, ooh, next time I shouldn't do that. Oh, that has to change. It's a constant learning process for a composer. And it's exciting that each piece just gets a little bit better.
Right. Yeah, and I can see it like as a sculpture, like chipping away a little piece that makes it just a little bit softer and smoother. And
That's right.
I
That's
love
right.
it. I love it. At the moment, do when you're taking a break from work, are you still in the music space in your mind?
Oh my gosh,
Can you watch
yes.
a movie and enjoy it without like kind of feeling like, how does this go together? I can't imagine how you could just tune that out.
When I'm in the creative process and I'm taking a break, the brain will not shut down. It shuts down when I'm like watching a movie or binge watching a Netflix show. That's why I enjoy my evenings watching Netflix. It shuts the brain off. But if I'm going to the gym or driving to the gym, I'm like, okay, what should I do in this section? How's that going to work? Should I change the orchestration? So it nonstop. The working keeps going until the piece is done, and then
Right.
the brain stops. And that's just the process. And I love that process. Sometimes it's a little exhausting, and I just wish my brain would shut off for a few minutes. It eventually does. It's just when you're creative, it
Right.
just keeps going until you get it right.
Yeah, I could see that with having that project in your head and you just want to see how it comes out. Like, what's the final going to look like? Is it going to work? And
Yeah.
so it's always in your head. And so I'm imagining the Netflix shows, music, do those kind of ever interfere and come into your quiet space and say, wait, nope, I'm not doing music right now?
Well, I do always pay attention to scores in movies. That'll never go away. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's nice what they did there. Oh, that kind of sounds weird. So, no, I'm always very aware of the musical scores in movies and TV shows. It's part of who I am.
And yeah, exactly, like growing up with that in your world and your space. So when you were growing up and your family was playing music, were you starting super young, or were you just hearing them make music there at the home and then just kind of then evolved into, learning trumpet? Were you doing things young, very young?
So I think I started trumpet when I was I think it's fourth grade when we started. And they gave us choices. They said, what is your first choice for an instrument and your second? My first choice was actually violin.
Oh
My
wow.
second choice was trumpet. And they said, we're going to give you trumpet. And I was like, okay, great. I didn't care. And then my father, he's a clarinetist. I was fascinated with the clarinet. I said, how do I do this? And he taught me all of the. I mean, I'm a terrible clarinet player, but I know all the fingerings up to high C, up above high C. I don't know, but I could pretty much play clarinet maybe in a middle school band, and I'd be
Nice.
okay. So
When you were
yeah,
younger, before you got the choice, were you like a 5-year-old listening to them practice at home, or was it just part of your world?
yeah, I would always watch my brother practice clarinet. I was fascinated. He was great. He is great. And I would just watch his fingers move. I didn't understand what the music said yet because I didn't couldn't read music.
Sure.
I was like, oh, cool. And of course, my father always played Italian music. Was always going on through the house, and yeah. And I remember listening. I had records, little records in my record player, and I loved listening to songs and all that stuff. It was great.
I love that. Well, did you pretend at all that you were doing music with a band or anything like that?
I think when I started studying, I had these fantasies that I was going to be the next John Williams.
I love it.
Of course, John Williams is a genius, and that's not going to happen, and that's okay.
Hey, you
But
never.
I did fantasize about conducting my score and going to the movies and seeing my name, and my name comes at the end, and I'll take that. I'm happy with
I
that.
mean, that's so amazing. And it's funny to
Yeah.
see that, like, okay, for, me or, anybody else, that's just like, whoa, that's so amazing to see that's, you're a part of that. To me, this is the obvious answer. But if you didn't have the musical surrounding as a child, would you have gone in this direction?
I probably would have because the school offered that
Okay.
option to start studying. Plus, I even as a kid, whenever like I would watch TV, I was focused in on the themes of those TV tunes and commercials in music. I was like, wow, that's a great tune. I was drawn to these melodies and I loved them. So I think if there was no music, like my father didn't play clarinet or my brother didn't, I still probably would have started studying trumpet and music just because I loved it so much.
Yeah, I'm always curious about that. I grew up in a musical home as well, and I kind of went that way for a little bit, and then back and forth between 2D art and music. But I always think there's kids out there who didn't have that upbringing, and they just something in their brain connected to the musical side of things, and then pursued that as a profession.
Hmm.
Do
Hmm.
those brains just work that way? So
Right.
I think that's fun to kind of play with that idea.
Who are your influence artistically?
Artistically, a lot of picture book past 90s 80s picture book creators,
Hmm.
but also a lot of TV shows and movies. So
Oh,
because I watched a lot of that when I was a kid,
oh,
and
sure.
the story part of the and then just kind of putting it into something that's just a scene at a time kind of thing. Like a picture book is just
Yeah,
I just like that. But yeah,
that's
it's
great. That is so
yeah, you never.
awesome.
Yeah, it's just like things that you pick up on that, like as a kid, you just something sticks in your brain, and it just fascinates you.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
I love
Oh
it.
yeah.
As you are, a composer and orchestrator now, what advice would you give your younger self as you began your musical career?
So I don't know if you know this. I'm actually a self-taught composer, which I
No.
don't think is the route that a
Wow.
composer should go. Yeah, aside from learning how to play trumpet and college theory, I'm self-taught.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is, but it's a more challenging journey. I would suggest, and I have suggested to young composers, go to college, find a teacher that supports your style of writing, study form, analysis, theory, counterpoint, orchestration, all that stuff. If you have all the tools, you can go on to be a very successful composer. Of course, you have to have the passion and you have to have some natural abilities. I would have gone back to my younger self and say, find a teacher that supports the kind of music you like to write, and maybe that'll help you. I did have a teacher in college that I took for one semester. He's a genius. There's no doubt the guy's a genius, but he wanted me to write stuff like this. Now, as beautiful as that is, it's not my style.
Very abstract, very modern.
Yeah, and he was not a fan of film stuff and
How
didn't work.
funny. I don't usually share too much about myself in conversations here, but in college, we were more focused on more modern art. And it took me graduating college to take a year off to say, I want to do silly pictures of dogs, like it wasn't what they would consider art, but it's what worked for me. So yeah, I think I completely see how you need that, somebody to respect your vision, that you don't need to be like the thing that's catching on, or like the most modern thing right now. And I
Yeah.
completely agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what do you most appreciate about your musical career?
I feel very blessed that I have the passion and the patience to be a composer because it's somewhat of a solitary life. And I do enjoy that. I like to be in my studio all day by myself working on music and creating a composition. I would say that that's pretty much in a nutshell.
So the quiet space of the artist to create is
Yeah,
I can see that too. And I'm sure, I mean, I can just
you have a lot of time where you have to be by yourself, I think, when you're
right.
doing your stuff,
And I think that
right?
I'm just trying to imagine other artists that are in the same mindset. And are there times like, you'll conduct some of your pieces? How often do you do that?
It's sporadic throughout the year, maybe 4 or 5 times. Depends on the year.
Is that enjoyable?
Oh, it's man, getting in front of a group live. That's the best part of it. That's great. You get to hear it, and if they
Right.
sound good, it's even better. And most of them sound great. And we rehearse, and oh, it's
Oh,
awesome.
that's what I was wondering. Like, just this, like, you made this in your brain, you put it all out there in all of the pieces, you're hearing it in the computer, and then to hear it live and actually being played by people all around you and having the sound come out you would be so magical.
It's total magical, and that's why I do it. And the funny thing is, after I hear a piece for the first time, I actually have to fix things here and there, little tiny things that no one else would notice, but I would notice because you want the piece to be as best as it can be. And usually it's never perfect the first time. Once I hear it, then I make adjustments and it's ready to go to the publishers.
So the who are the bands performing that for you to hear, or is that in the computer?
First, it's in the computer, which it's not realistic. It's when I go to a premiere of a commission.
Oh.
That's when I hear it for the first time, and that's when I know what needs to be adjusted. Maybe the clarinet's too high here. Then I go fix it. Then I
Okay.
send it to the publisher.
Okay, great. Yeah, it seems like you have to have that live, real performance in order to catch things that wouldn't have made sense in the computer if it was just straight sounds, right?
Totally need the live version because a computer does not. It gives you an okay version, but there's live musicians playing it. There's issues with idiomatic issues with the instruments that you need to sometimes adjust. So
Right, if they couldn't get to a note based on the mechanics of the instrument quick enough,
right,
that kind of thing. Okay.
exactly,
That's
yeah,
okay. Yeah, and the computer can obviously just hit it because it's a computer.
exactly.
Oh, okay. That's really fun then to have that and to adjust from the live. Would you ever want like I just go out into my living room and there's a live orchestra ready to play it for me. Like just
Oh,
a
you're so funny that you said that because I always had this fantasy that I'm a millionaire and I have just an orchestra in the next room ready to try a couple of my snippets.
right.
That
Because you
would
have
be
to
great.
wait. You have to wait till they look at it, practice. I mean, professional musicians don't really have to practice too much. They just kind of read it. But yeah, like, hey guys, what does this sound like? Okay, great. I'll go back and tweak it. So you have this delay in the response. Oh man.
I know you have to wait, and sometimes I have to wait a year
Oh my
before
gosh.
I hear a piece performed live, and that's okay. I'm used to it.
That's tricky though. Yeah, that would be hard. And so this is obviously not going to find the answer here, but do you have a favorite out of all of your 80-ish pieces that you've composed? I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah. Oh, that's tough to answer because they're all like little children to me.
Yes.
They're all very special. Some go on to be more successful than the others, and that's okay. Well, there is one piece. I was commissioned by the United States Air Force Band, which I was like, what?
Nice.
I was very scared, but I already wrote the piece. It's being premiered next year, and I would say that's the best piece I've ever written. It's called Cascading Glaciers.
And next year, so it'll be out in 2027.
It'll be premiered at the Midwest Conference in Chicago in December of this year.
Wow. Okay. I will be looking to hear that because
Yeah.
that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess, my final question, which I could totally be picking your brain like all day about
Sure.
these fun things. What does success mean to you at the end of the day? Do you find success in where you've built things, and how is that for you? Like you mentioned, even today, the struggle of creating something. Would you still be doing this? And is this successful in your mind?
Well, for me, successful is being the best I can be and trying to write the best music I can possibly create with my capabilities. There's different levels of talent, and I'm just being the best I can be. And I feel very happy with my life, very lucky that I have this passion and ability to write music that people appreciate. And for me, that is a happy life, and it's not an easy life, definitely not easy, but it is a happy life, and I'm proud of the fact that I can do this, and I hope I can do this until the day I die.
That's really good to hear, right? Because you're doing what you enjoy and obviously passionate about, and passionate in that desire to discover and create and see the process. So, I think it sounds like the love of the process and getting to that piece is the drive for you. And I think that, like you said, it makes you happy about it.
Yeah,
You're doing what you love, even though it's hard. And I'm
right.
just glad that your brain is doing that so that we can
Yeah.
enjoy your music.
Do you feel the same way about your art?
Absolutely. Daily thinking this is harder than just doing something else, like a 9 to 5 gig. And it is more rewarding, all the things that I'm able to do. And even this podcast is so rewarding. It's just, it has to be done. And I think creatives can appreciate and take this idea that, it's going to be hard. But it's almost, it's this has to be hard, but it's so rewarding.
It does have to be hard, and it is very rewarding. And I've accepted the challenges. Sometimes I talk to God. I say, "Can't this just be a little easier?" But it's not. It's always going to be a challenge, and it's always going to be the more challenging it is, the rewards are epic.
Yes.
So
I was just thinking that too. Like, yeah, if you struggled so much with something and then you completed it and it's good, and that I think is that addiction moment of I got to try this again.
yeah.
That reward at the end is worth doing it all over again. So I want to know where people can find you online, or more importantly, where they can find your music to listen.
So I'm basically, it's just Facebook is where I really am at. I have no message or Instagram or anything like that. So Facebook, and the majority of my music can be found on JW Pepper. That's where everything is. Of course, you can go to the separate publisher sites like Alfred, Shermer, Hafabra, Make Music, but everything's pretty much on JW Pepper, and that's where you find my music.
Great. And then for people to listen to songs or samples, they could go to YouTube or
Just type my name in.
yeah. And that's what's fun. You can kind of follow along and see the new things that are coming out. So perfect. I will
Yes.
put those in the show notes so that people can find you online as well. Thank you so much for giving us a glimpse inside what often feels so mysterious, to those outside of this professional composition music industry place. It's such a mystery to so many of us, and to hear your side of things and how it works has just been such a treat. And I'm so happy you could come on. So thank you.
Well, I am very honored and flattered, and thank you so much. It was so much fun. You made it very easy for me, so thank you.
It's just fun. I just love this. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this podcast and found it valuable, please share it with others so we can reach people who might like a little bit of inspiration on their own creative journey. I'm Becky Gehrisch, and until next time, happy creating.
Hey there, creative minds! Are you ready for the next burst of inspiration? Make sure to subscribe to the Origins of Creativity podcast in your favorite podcast app for all our latest episodes. Visit BooklingMedia.com/podcast for show details, links to connect with us, and so much more. This has been the Origins of Creativity podcast, where inspiration meets imagination.